Shalom. Welcome back to Window on Mount Zion. We are going to be reading chapter 5. It's a short chapter, so we'll do the chapter, finish it today. It's approaching winter time. The days were growing shorter. The garden was preparing for its winter sleep as the soaking winter rains set in. If you see the diagram of the annual cycle, now the fall is over, the Sukkot celebration, and it's now heading for Hanukkah, the time of dedication, which is a winter holiday. The cycle of the year's festivals from our first Hanukkah on Mount Zion had, moving with the seasons, run its course, and once again we were approaching Hanukkah, the beginning of another cycle. We remembered the first Hanukkah, which we had shared with Yaakov and the Nachal boys, the endless supply of potato fritters and Tamar's birthday cake, the fierce storm that had raged outside, and the strong sense of peace and security that enclosed us as we sat in the house. We were together again, and new friends had joined the familiar faces around the table to celebrate the festival. A Hanukkah story. On the first day of Hanukkah, I stood at our window and watched two figures coming up the hill. They were walking slowly, a tall young man supporting a small, frail, elderly woman, the sleeves of whose buttoned coat hung empty at her sides. I watched, drawn to them in some indefinable way, as they approached the chamber of martyrs and then went down the steps to its entrance. Some time later, as I came up from the garden, I saw the same couple approaching our gate. The woman looked even more frail than before, if that was possible, and her wrinkled cheeks were still wet with tears. The young man stopped. "Could I trouble you for a glass of water for my friend?" he asked. "Of course," I replied, and invited them inside. He accepted gratefully and gently led his companion into our house. When they were seated in the lounge, I brought them water. He took the glass and put it to the lips of his companion, delicately and with infinite care, so that she might drink. "Wouldn't you both like to rest here for a while?" "I think it would be a good idea," he said, looking at his companion. "Thank you. My name is Chaim Yassur. My friend is Frau Braun. Her English is not very good, but she understands." At the mention of her name, the woman's face was transformed by a smile of greeting. The room was warm. She stood up, and as she removed her coat, the sleeves of her simple dress hung empty at her sides. I left them sitting together while I made some tea and sandwiches, which I thought they might like. Again, I was deeply impressed with the love that he showed her as he helped her to sip her tea and eat a little of the sandwich. Impelled by more than ordinary curiosity, I said, "May I ask what brought you here? Mount Zion is a very special place for me." I saw them exchange glances and the woman's slight nod. "Well," said the tall young man, "we came today to kindle a light before the ashes in the chamber of the martyrs in memory of our dear departed ones." "It is a long story if you have the patience to listen to it." "Please do tell me," I replied. Chaim began. "I came to this country at the age of 17, together with a number of other lads rescued from the concentration camps in Germany. I had seen some of the concentration camp survivors in London before I came to Israel, their bodies weakened, their minds clouded, or forever warped by their experiences in labor camps or the death camps. What happened when you arrived in Israel?" I asked. "We were taken to a kibbutz, where, with loving care, so many of us were made near whole again. Now I'm happily married with 2 children. But he hastily added, of course, that's another story. I shall now recount the story I pieced together from Chaim Yasua's account that evening. Every eve of Hanukkah, he had the same dream in which his mother is, "Go and look for Angel, look for Angel." When he first had the dream, he had not taken much notice of it. Angel was surely dead, and in any case he could not possibly go and look for her at that time. Hanukkah was always a soul-stirring time for him. Memories buried deep within him were revived by his mother's voice. In latter years, the dream had begun to torment him and gave him no peace. By then, he had saved enough money for the journey, and after celebrating Hanukkah with his family, he set out to obey his mother's command. For many months, he searched all likely places in Germany, offices holding records of Nazi victims, hospitals, institutions, but he found no trace of Angel. His money had run out, and his family in Israel was deeply troubled by his long absence. Was it a disturbance of the mind driving him on this seemingly hopeless quest? Was he a fool chasing a phantom? Chaim asked himself these and many other questions, but found himself unable to go home. He took whatever work he could find and continued to search. He could not rest. Soon it would be Hanukkah again, and once more he was drawn to his small hometown where he had last seen Angel. The town itself had been destroyed and rebuilt, and he'd already searched there in vain. But now he stood gazing at a new building. How long he had been there he did not know. In his mind's eye he saw only the old house which had once stood on this site, the house from which the Nazis had taken them away, him, his mother, his lovely sister Sarah, and his 2 little brothers. A poor widow had lived there, and it was she who had seen his father dragged off by the Nazis from their home a few doors away, while the family had been out shopping. And it was she who had run to warn them not to return home, but to come to her home after nightfall. She had kept them hidden in her cellar for many months, fed them and ministered to their needs. They had called her Angel, but the Germans later called her traitor, Judenfreund. But now it was the eve of Hanukkah there in her cellar. An angel had a surprise for them. She had found an old menorah, or Chanukia, an 8-branched Hanukkah candlestick. She took some candles from her Christmas tree, and she had baked a cake with ingredients she had in some miraculous way collected. After securely shutting all doors and windows, she took these treasures down to the cellar. She then made sure that every crack through which a light might be seen was sealed, and she closed the barred door with extra care. But Angel had not noticed, as she descended the stairs, that a suspicious neighbor had been crouching unseen in a dark corner at the entrance. They sat around the makeshift table in the cellar, his mother, Sarah, the 2 little boys, Angel, and Chaim. Chaim kindled the first Hanukkah light with the prayer his father had taught him as a small boy, and they told stories about the light and the miracle of the light and the Lord's deliverance. They spoke about the courage of the Maccabees, who had been ready to fight and to die for their faith in the God of Israel, rather than surrender to the worshippers of idols. The family forgot their own plight for a while, and were inspired with new hope and courage. They saw the tears in Angel's eyes shining like stars in heaven, and felt the love which flowed from heart to heart. But outside, the floodgates of hell had been opened, and the river's gushing blood knew no bounds. Suddenly, they heard heavy footsteps on the stairs. The barricaded door was pounded open. The swastikas on several armbands were revealed in the last flickering of the Hanukkah light. Cruel hands grabbed the mother, clutching her two frightened small children. Chaim stood protectively at the side of his sister. Angel stretched out hands, clasped in prayer, pleading. A bullet passed through both her arms, and she fell in a pool of her own blood. Chaim seemed to have stood before the house for a long time, as these memories flickered vividly on the screen of his mind. A white-haired stranger passing by noticed the look of suffering on Chaim's face. "Can I do anything for you?" he asked. "No, no, no," replied Chaim, slowly returning to awareness of his surroundings. "Perhaps memories have brought you here," the stranger asked intuitively. Chaim's silence and the sad look on his face held him. "You are a stranger here, aren't you?" he asked. "I lived on this street when I was a boy," Chaim replied. "I come now from Israel." The stranger understood. "There is nothing much left of the past in this town except memories." The stranger shook his head sadly. "Memories, haunting memories. This very house before which you stand was built on the site of the house of a very dear friend who lived here before the war. She had always loved the Jews and went through an agony of suffering for them and with them. She lost both her arms in an effort to save a Jewish family. They all perished in the gas ovens. But she survived the concentration camps and is now old and helpless in an institution in Switzerland." After Chaim had finished recounting this story, we sat silently for quite a while. Chaim then looked lovingly at the woman beside him and said, "Angel was with us last night as we sat around the table, and I kindled the first Hanukkah light with the prayer that my father had taught me as a small boy, and our children happily sang the Hanukkah songs. We spoke of the miracle of the light and the Lord's deliverance, and in the children's singing were the echoes of that other singing, and the voices of that family in Angel's cellar seemed to mingle with ours." So please join us. That is the end of chapter 5. Please join us for chapter 6, the next time that we meet at the window on Mount Zion. Shalom.